Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome yet again to another episode of Dinner Guide. My name is Chef Andy and I'll be your host today. And today we are going to be working on a very simple yet exquisite dish. We're going to be making a beef samosa right on this very stage. So without further ado, I'll introduce my ingredients and then we're going to go straight into it. I'm going to be working with some green chilies, as you can see. I've got some nice local lemons there. I've got a bit of manda there. This is just the dough that we're going to be using to make our sheets. I've got some pre-cooked beef mince here. I've got some red chopped onions. I've got some all-purpose flour, some cumin powder, some salt, some ground cumin there, and some oregano, dried oregano. So we're going to take a short break now. Do take this chance to grab your pens and papers, and when we come back, I'm just going to show you how it's done. See you in a little while. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We took a short commercial break and now we are just about to get into the dish of the day. As I mentioned, for those who missed out on the introduction, I'm Chef Andy and today we are going to be making a very simple dish. We're going to be working on some beef samosas. Now, I'll first show you this beautiful dough that I have in my hand. So this is a very, very simple dough that I made a little earlier than we began. So very, very simple technique. It's about half a cup of water, 1 cup of flour, just a pinch of salt. I kneaded that really, really well. Took my time to knead it. I gave it about 20 minutes to rest. And now we're just going to go split it up and now start making our sheets. All right. So I always like to use a pizza cutter. It actually makes my work a little easier when I'm working with dough. But if you don't have one of these, you can use any of the knives similar to mine on the front here. I just find this easier to work when I work with dough. Right. So very, very simple. First of all, I start by portioning out the balls into a smaller size. Remember, each ball I'm folding out should be able to make a sizable sheet, and they all should actually come out the same size. Remember, the idea is to get evenness to it. And consistency, of course. Right, so as you can see, they're pretty much the same size. All I did was roll out the ball into a nice symmetrical round, and then I cut it in half and then in quarters, and it's just the same balls I've just been rolling out now into what you can see. So without further ado, let's just go into it. I'm just going to push this a little further ahead of me. You can be able to see what we're doing. All right, so very, very important, before you start, always make sure you've got a nice working area. Make sure it's clean. Have some flour, be able to dust your surface. All right, and all we are going to do now is we are going to roll this out. I'm going to be working with this rolling pin here. So very, very simple. All I do is give it one press on the top, and then I turn it around. And I give it another press, and then I sprinkle just a little more flour on the surface. Remember, you don't want to put too much flour at once. And all I'm going to do with the rolling pin is start right in the center, and I'm going to press down, and I'm going to pull it towards me. And back to the center again, and I'm going to push that forward. And then I'm just going to turn it 90 degrees to the left, and I'm just going to keep doing the same thing. And I'm just going to try and stretch out this beautiful piece of dough. So I'm not going to roll it out completely. I'm just going to roll it to about 2 inches in diameter. And I'm just going to set that aside, and I'm just going to continue the process for the rest. Right, so very, very simple technique. As I said, it's something you can be able to do at home, and it's something you can take your time and practice and get to learn. Of course, I'm not going to insist that this is something you're going to learn really, really quick. It's something that also took me, myself, a bit of time to actually be able to do. But if you do have an inconvenience to making this yourselves, maybe you don't have some of the equipment or some of the utensils we're using, you can actually be able to find pre-done samosa sheets in your regular supermarkets or just regular outlets out there. Right, so a very, very important, crucial thing to remember when working with samosas, very crucial to work with fresh ingredients. Remember, if you're going to be making this and if you're going to be considering making extra and keeping them in the refrigerator, you want to first make sure that your ingredients are fresh, because you don't want to refrigerate something that you might pull out and it might actually affect you. So be very cautious when purchasing your meat, and especially buying your meat from the best locations that you can find. For this particular recipe, we'll be working with just very regular lean mince, which you can be able to see to my right. Right, so now I have all my sheets about 2 inches in diameter. Now I'm just going to show you how we're gonna get the sheets out of this. Okay, so I'm gonna first of all start by warming up my pan right on the counter here, and I'm gonna leave it at low heat. Remember, we're only trying to make the sheets, we're not trying to cook them all the way. Right, so very, very simple. Just gonna dust off that extra. So very, very simple. For this next step, you're going to need a bit of cooking oil, and I always like to use a smaller spoon. So all I'm going to do now is tiny bit of flour. All I'm going to do is just drizzle about 1.5 teaspoons on top of this particular sheet, and I'm just going to use my spoon, and I'm just going to work my way right around to the edges. Remember, you're only putting a bit of the oil so that they don't stick to each other. You're not really trying to cover it completely with oil, so just a teaspoon for this particular size for me works really well. So we'll continue with the same process till we build it all up. So remember, always work from the center, because this allows you to get an even spreading of the oil. And second of all, it actually allows you to avoid spilling the oil over and wasting it over your counter table. Okay, so I'm just going to continue doing the same thing up to the last sheet. So I'm just going to be working with the 4 sheets for now. This should be enough to make at least about 16 portions. Alright, so easy as that. So we are not going to oil the top. All I'm going to do now is use my rolling pin, and I'm just going to press that down. So remember, this is just to get a bit of the air out before we roll it out. So I always recommend just give it a nice patting with your rolling pin before you start rolling out. This actually just allows you to get all that excess air out of those pockets. And it's also crucial that you turn it around. Just make sure your sheets are just interlining right on top of each other, and you can just start rolling out your sheet now. So just the same way we started, center towards the edges out, turn it 90 degrees to your left, pull it back and forth again, and then just continue working it out until you get that beautiful symmetry out of it. So as you can see, the sheets might actually start to spread out. Let that not worry you. I'll show you something you can do to fix that. Right, so I'm just going to finish rolling this out. Okay, easy peasy, simple as that. So remember, you're looking for very thin sheets, so you really want to spread it out as wide as you possibly can. And for me, something to about that about 6 inches wide. That really works really well for me personally. So I'm just going to show you what to do next. And normally I like to get my symmetry first of all by using a plate. So I would normally just place a plate right on top, and I would use my pizza cutter to take off all that excess on the sides. You can also use a knife for this process. Right, so now I can easily discard that. And once I turn over my plate, you can see you actually get beautiful symmetric manda sheets there. So this goes straight onto a dry pan, and all you do at this stage is just monitor it. You're actually just going to give it some time to start drying out as you continue peeling the sheets one by one, which you're going to see now. And it's a very, very quick process. As I said, it's something you don't want to leave unattended. You want to be really, really close to your pan at this point in time. I recommend you always have a lifter for this process, but if you actually can be able to turn the sheets by hand, I recommend go for it. So as I said, just about half a minute on each side, and just keep rotating them. So you should be able to just start getting just a bit of color, but remember, you're not looking for the color, you're actually just trying to get the sheets to split. And I'll show you now, for example, how that comes out. So as you can see, that just peels off easily. The first sheet is already done. And all I do now is, remember the other side is also cooking. So you want to turn that again. And you want to check on your second sheet now. Always try and ease the grip from the sides. And I always recommend, if it's still too sticky, don't struggle to pull it out. Give it a bit of time, flip it a few times, it'll just come out on its own. So this side is a bit attached. I'm just going to flip that and we'll check on the other side. So remember, it's not about cooking each layer on the pan directly. Remember, the heat does go through. The oil does start to expand. It starts to really open up the dough, and that's how you actually get the sheets to open up. All right. So as you can see, sheet 2 is already done. So it's a very, very simple technique, and it shouldn't take you more than 10 minutes to actually get through this whole process. So easy as that. So as you can see, nice, beautiful sheets. All I'm going to do at this stage is bring those next to my board here. And I always recommend, it is very, very important to have a bag that you can use. I like to use a food bag. These are disposable and they're sanitary, so they're very, very good and handy. So I like to use this to let my manda cool inside, because it first of all doesn't allow them to dry out too fast, but I actually give it just a few seconds to cool off before I put them in the bag. I would probably rest them for about maybe 4 to 5 minutes. Just make sure they're still soft, but they're not very hot when you start to fold. Otherwise you will get that damp smell inside once you're done folding them, okay? So very simple to that. So I'm just going to start cutting these up. And the first thing I do is, remember, you're looking for 2 different techniques to do this. So I'm just going to split this in 2. And I'm going to show you 2 different techniques of how to cut your sheets. Remember, there's always a necessity to try and save as much as you can. So I'm going to show you the easiest and best way to try and save your manda. So all I'm going to do is, I'm going to use my pizza cutter, and I'm going to work lengthways right across, and then I'm gonna cut those into quarters again. And as you can see, you get very, very beautiful portioned out sheets there. So this is just but one technique. I'm just going to move those to the bag. Now the second technique, which is something that a lot of people actually find a little easier to work with. This is also another technique to cut it. So most of you will probably enjoy cutting it like this. So you normally take the edges out first of all. So what would happen is, you'd end up with something in this shape, and all you do is give that a fold just to mark where your center mark is. And once you fold it out, you actually see the indentation right where you left it. and all you're going to do is go right across, and then you're going to put this together. Remember, you're also trying to cut them exactly the same size, so this is also another technique to do it. So you're going to, once you cut them this way, you're going to get to a point where now you need to trim the edges, because remember, you do have to fold it. So it is very, very simple. I start from the edge here, and I work my way across to the top, and I do the same thing on the other side. And it is as easy as that. So these are definitely two different techniques you can be able to use your manda, or two different techniques you can use to cut your manda. And all of them work really well, but as I said earlier, there is an element of waste which we're always trying to avoid, and that's exactly what I was showing you. So we're going to jump into a short commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to show you how to fold these. I'm going to show you how to fry them, how best to set your pan for that, and then we're going to go straight into serving. Thank you for tuning in. See you after the short break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We took a short break and now we are back. We did some manda just before we went on break, and now we are just about ready to come back and finish this off. So first thing I'll do is I'm going to have my oil going on the side here. We're going to be looking back on this a little later when we are frying. But now I need your attention back on this side. So I'm now going to show you how to assemble your simple beef samosa mixture, and I'm going to be doing it with these ingredients in front of me. So here I'll be working with a bit of dried parsley, a bit of cumin, a bit of paprika powder there, and a bit of salt. So I'm just going to start by adding my meat to the bowl. And then I'll go in with my teaspoon of cumin, a teaspoon of paprika, about 2 teaspoons of dried parsley, and about 2 to 3 pinches of salt. And last but not least, say about 1 cup of chopped red onions. Right, simple as that. And all I do to that mixture is mix it through. So remember, you're not obligated to stick with the same ingredients I'm using for the filling. You can always alternatively have your own. I know personally I enjoy having maybe carrot and pea samosas, or just mashed potato samosas. Those are really, really healthy and tasty. But this particular one is one that I particularly like to show people how to do, because it's one of the most trickiest ones of them all. Alright, so just make sure to get a nice even mixture right through. Make sure you can be able to just look right through your mixture and see a nice evenness right in there. Right, so your mixture is ready. You can now set that aside. Now I'll direct your attention here. So I'm going to show you quickly how to make your binding agent. So this is basically what's going to help you get your samosas to stick really well together. So in this little bowl here, I have about 3.5 teaspoons of all-purpose flour, and this is just regular room temperature water. And all I'm going to do is mix. So remember, what I'm looking for is a not very runny paste and not a very thick paste, but just something I can be able to rub onto the sheets, and it should be able to actually help them stick together before they go into the hot oil. Right, so as you can see, very, very little water. So that was about 30 to 40 ml of room temperature water. And my paste is still a little thick. I always recommend, please give it a nice continuous mix before you add any water in there. Just make sure all the flour has been incorporated before you continue adding your water, because you don't really want to waste all this mixture that you've been working on. Right, so it's now just about runny enough. Just going to show you what it looks like in a little bit. So I always insist, give it a nice thorough mix. Remember, the more you mix, the more chances you have of reducing those lumps that are inside your mixture. So I always recommend, mix it as long as you need to, but just make sure to try and avoid the lumps. And I like to use a small spoon because it actually helps me break the lumps as I go. And I like to use this little curved bowl, and you can use a bowl even this size as long as it gives you room to really go around the sides and break those flour lumps that seemingly are hard to remove even when you're making your binding agent here. Right, so as you can see, it's a little nice and runny. Very few lumps, as you can see. They actually reduce as you continue mixing. So this is about ready. We're just going to get rid of that. All right, so very, very simple. Right. Now I'm going to show you how to fold a samosa now. And it's a very, very simple technique. So as I mentioned earlier, I always give my sheets just a bit of time to sit in the bags because this keeps them moist. It doesn't allow them to dry out, and they stay moist just until the point you're ready to start folding. So I'm going to just take about 3 sheets of each just for demonstration, and I'm going to reserve the rest for later. So I'm going to just take about 2 from there, and I'll take 3 from the other batch. Right, so this can easily be able to sit in your refrigerator for a good 1 week, but I always recommend, if you're going to be making samosas and you're doing them at home, if they're not going to be sold or you're not going to be taking them elsewhere, just do it a little bit in advance. The difference is, it actually is there, and if you can do them on the same day, please do. Right, so for this particular technique, 3 pointers that you need a plate somewhere that you can actually lay your samosas. You're also going to need a bit of flour just for dusting, a bit of your binding agent, and last but not least, you will also need a spoon which you'll be using to fill up your samosas. So I'm just going to start with the half moons that I have, the quarter moons that I have at the back here, and I'm just going to show you how to fold. So very, very simple technique. I normally just go around the sides like that and then round to the top. Remember, what you're looking for is, first of all, you're looking for the pocket, and second of all, you're trying to make sure that you seal that little hole that's right at the bottom. So an easy technique to doing that is just roll it into a spiral, just touch a bit of that glue and then attach that together like that, and as you can see, the pocket really holds well. It actually is that easy. For the other sheet that I had, I'm just going to show you how this would be done. So this particular one is a little bigger in size. So all I do is I fold it in once, about, let's say about at a 45-degree angle, and then I fold the other edge. And as you can see, I still attain the same result. I still manage to be able to close it off and just glue them together like that. I always give my my sheet just a few seconds before I fill it up, just to make sure that the glue is really working, especially in the beginning stages. You don't want to continue rushing into folding them and then you realize that it's too late and your samosa is breaking up and you can't really cook it. So this is a good step to try it out. Always fold about 2 pieces, give them a few seconds to sit, and as you can see, this holds shape really well. And now after that, you're just going to go in with your filling. So I always recommend try to fill it up about 3/4 way, and if you can squeeze just a little more in there, it's very okay. Remember, the idea of a beautiful samosa is it should be full, it should be thick, it should look like a samosa. It should not be falling flat and then you actually end up with less filling and more dough. So very, very simple. I'm just going to use my spoon to give that a press. And if you can be able to see from the cameras, as you can see, it's just about to the top of the, just about reaching the top of the samosa level there. And all I do is to make sure it's not too much, I always give it a press before closing. You will notice some of the mixture will rise. Just shake that off with your finger and then pocket that outer, the inner side, the side that's closest to you, just press that in with your thumb and use your index fingers to just flip that over like that. And it's as simple as that. You can see we have now both corners sealed. Just adjust that with your fingertips. Touch it just a little bit on the sides like that. And all you need to do is now just finish off by giving your samosa a bit of shape. And if you do have some of those holes that are still peeking out, I always use the same mixture that I used as my glue, and I just run that right around the edges like that. So as you've seen, very, very simple technique to do a samosa. I'm just going to show you with the other one now. So as you can see, this one's a little different. It comes with those two flaps, and there's a reason for that. This is because it's wider and it needs a little more reinforcement to hold shape. So I'm just going to fill this one and show you how we're going to fold this up. So as I said earlier, just about 3/4 way to the top. Use your fingers closest side to you, just press that in. If there's a bit of excess filling, just pour that out. So pocket, just press that in like that and then flip the flaps right on top like that. And then all you're going to do is make sure that the holes on the sides are covered. Put a bit of glue on your dough there and close that one side off. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. And I'll just close that off. So as you can see, very, very simple. Always take a bit of time just to reinforce it. Just make sure to pull it together and make sure not to, of course, rip open your dough. So as you can see, very, very simple techniques of folding samosas. We're not even going to fold anymore. I think that was a very good demonstration. So to that point, I would say there's two checkpoints when you get to this stage. You can either choose now to refrigerate these and cook them much later in time. You can rest them in the fridge and cook them in the same day, but please don't let them sit in the fridge overnight because the fridge is a little moist and they will get soggy. But if you're going to do so, I always recommend just take a bit of flour and sprinkle over the samosas. If you're going to be freezing them, this is just to make sure that they don't stick to each other when they're in the freezer. So once you've given it a bit of a coating, just give it a bit of a shake. And this particular one, now you can be able to pack this in a container very well and keep that in the refrigerator, and it will actually manage to stay in there until the time you need it. Now, for the one that I'm not going to dust, this I can be able to cook directly. Remember, the idea was not to coat it because it would get a little more thick on the outside, although this is going to dry up once it comes out of the freezer. So for this one just goes straight into the oil. So all I do is always try and look at your samosa before it goes in. Look at the sides that are folded and look at the sides that are neat and open. The side that has the flaps, that goes into the bottom, and the side that is better off and is a little more smoother, that stays on the top. So I'm just going to drop that in my oil there, and we're just going to give that a few seconds to cook. And I think we could just shake a bit of that off. And I'll drop that in the oil as well. All right, so very, very simple technique. As I said, very, very simple technique of making samosas. I'm sure you can now be able to do this at home. Serving suggestions for your samosas, I would always recommend maybe a bit of chopped chili, maybe some lemon wedges on the side. It goes really well with your samosas. Another thing to remember is always remember to put that on top of parchment paper or some kitchen towel when it comes out of the oil. allow it to drain all that excess oil out, and your samosa should actually be good to serve after that. So from my end, you've been watching BrandPlus TV. My name is Chef Andy. It's been lovely hosting the show today and showing you how to make the samosas, and I know you can now definitely be able to do this at home. So from my end, it's been a lovely day. Have a lovely evening. Have a lovely dinner this evening. If you're gonna be trying this out, do enjoy it. Follow our Facebook page, leave your comments, leave your inquiries, and we will get back to you. So from my end in the studios, have a lovely night. I'm just gonna stay here and continue folding samosas.